And a big welcome back to Second Nature. Our special guest today, Georgia Grace Edwards, the founder of Gnara, a very cool outdoor apparel company with a lot of cool things going on. Georgia Grace, welcome to the pod.
Thanks so much for having me.
GG is what we're going to refer to you now going forward. And you have been in touch with my good friend and co-host Aaron Lutzy. Aaron, good to see you.
Likewise, we got to give a big shout out to Emily Holland for making the connection as well. She introduced us, and I'm so fascinated to hear this story and to understand just all the different things that you've had to go through to get to this point, from developing a product and everything else into collaborations and beyond. This is going to be a fun one.
Where do you want to start, Aaron?
I think we got to just start at the beginning, and maybe could you give the audience who might not be familiar with Gnara, because I certainly wasn't beforehand either. Could you just kind of give everybody a primer of what the brand is about, and then maybe we go into like how it came to be?
Totally. So Gnara is on a mission to help everyone answer nature's call, quite literally, and we do that through our patented Go-Fly zipper technology. Is the one-liner.
It'll make a lot more sense if you visit Gnara.com, Gnara.com.
Formerly She-Fly. A couple people listening might know us as that as well. Yeah.
That's exactly where I wanted to start. You know, She-Fly, I think, is a much more literal description about what the product is, or at least what the original product is to me. The rebrand to Gnara, I think, opens the aperture in a way that probably creates a lot more optionality for you going forward. Talk us through the rebrand, what motivated it, and then also the practical X's and O's of how you executed it.
Yeah. So She-Fly was the name I came up with in college. We launched this from my college dorm room, and I wanted a name that was short, sweet, 2 syllables, gave the product and the intended audience all together, which She-Fly definitely did. But we quickly realized pretty much from the start that there was not going to be a ton of room to scale within that. We started becoming known as She-Flies by She-Fly, featuring She-Fly. So there was no differentiation between the company, the technology, and the products. And then we also realized that our audience is so much wider than that, especially with the Go-Fly technology. So that's what we rebranded the tech to. It's technically unisex. We've started with a focus on women because it's the more obvious pain point, but really is applicable to anyone. And with the name, we went through an accelerator program in 2021, and one of our good friends and mentors, Sean O'Brien, helped us with the rebrand. And so Gnara comes from the Latin root word naris, which means to get to know or to become familiar with. So we took this problem that at least half the population is highly familiar with and solved for it. And though the applications of the Go-Fly zipper tech are far reaching outside of just outdoor industry, we wanted to have a nod to the industry where we really got started. So thinking about shred the gnar or gnarly, but kind of redefining our take on those typical terms in the industry.
You may not know this, Gigi, but I'm a domain guy. Gnara.com, a baller piece of internet real estate. Congratulations on that. And a good brand, a good name.
Thank you. Blank slate was nice too, especially in an era where there's a lot of other products that have like Go Girl or She-Wee or Chick-Fly. We're in a completely different class. And so it's nice to have more of a blank term that we can imbue our own meaning onto. The only thing that comes up on our Google alerts sometimes is Go-Fly is some kind of flight allegiance. And so sometimes we get like airline notifications. But other than that, it was really strong on the trademarking availability.
Great.
So the practical explanation for the people that are listening to the podcast who haven't made it to Gnara.com yet is that the Go-Fly technology is essentially, and I'm simplifying here, but it's pretty much a zipper that goes, front to back so that you can go outside. And
in the crotch region, let's just clarify.
Begins at the base of where a traditional fly is, right. And extends all the way to the back waistband.
So I'm really curious to hear from you this development. So you have the idea, which, it's one of those things where it feels very obvious, like now that it exists, but prior to that, probably didn't seem that obvious. What was that initial kind of testing and like, okay, we got to make a fresh set of shorts that actually have this thing in it. Was it a challenge or was it a lot easier than maybe we would have expected because you just had to find a really long zipper to test it out? Like, how did that first prototype come together?
Yeah, I'd say a lot more complicated. If it were that easy, for sure, someone else would have done it by now. I think a lot of people have thought about it and worked on solutions to it, but it was a long time coming to get to where we are, dozens and dozens and dozens of refinements. The idea came from my work as a glacier guide in Alaska. So I was one of the only, sometimes the only woman up on the ice for 8 to 12 hours a day. And in comparison to the guys who could turn around, unzip, go whenever, wherever, I was trekking across the glacier, carefully avoiding crevasses, completely removing 3 to 4 layers in freezing temperatures, doing my thing, putting it all back on, hiking back to work. And that process was a huge waste of time and energy that left me feeling cold for hours after, to the point where I started dehydrating myself. And I was like, I'm a guide. I'm responsible for other people's safety. I should be at peak physical performance. Like, this makes absolutely no sense once I started thinking about it. And then I did a deep dive on the history of women's pants, or the lack thereof. And there's a lot of rich historical context in there, but I think something that really stands out is the fact that women were not permitted to wear pants on the floor of the U.S. Senate until 1993. So this women's pants as an industry is so young, and virtually no innovation has happened within it, besides like pockets, which are revolutionary if you also happen to have them in your dress or a jumpsuit or something like that. And so the first prototypes I went to like Goodwill. I had a college professor who also like picked up some thrift store versions of pants. We had jeans and sweatpants and cross-country ski pants, all different types. And then I went to Joann Fabrics and got a bunch of closing mechanisms, I called them. So I had like Velcro, buttons, snaps, zippers. And I had not sewn since 7th grade home economics class. So that should give a pretty good idea of how good these protos looked. But the function was pretty immediately there. They worked. They just needed some refining on the aesthetic side, I would say. And my senior year of college, I sat on this idea for a couple years. And then my senior year of college at Middlebury in Vermont, took a 4-week entrepreneurship class. So I sewed these protos over winter break, and then throughout the month of January worked on a business plan to go along with them. And at the end of those 4 weeks, won our first pitch competition, which was $250. And I took that to a local seamstress in Vermont, and she helped us refine the design. And that was eventually enough to make a tech pack to take it to a factory, and then to slightly iterate upon that design in different applications. So the way that the Go-Fly works in our flagship product, our Go There pants, is slightly different from our Go Free products like leggings and bike shorts, is slightly different from anything that goes into like an overall or a ski bib, for example.
Another legendary mid kid here. I mean, it cranks out a bunch of great athlete and outdoor professionals, yourself included, Gigi,
That's
Middlebury
a really cool
College.
place.
Yeah. So was this, you said it was sort of, you started making more progress on it during the entrepreneurship class. It sort of implies that even though it was likely a thing that was solving an issue of your own, you described the dodging crevasses on the glacier. What at that point, did you think of it as a business too? Or when did you start to feel some momentum behind it that it actually could be something that would be viable in the market?
Yeah, no, I never knew this was going to be more than like a personal pain point. And then once I realized like over 50% of women have had a bathroom accident outside in the past year, then I was like, oh, that's a pretty good TAM. And then I was like, I'll explore it in this class. It's my last chance before I graduate and go get a real job. And then that was pretty much nonstop traction, and realizing that there was enough there to file multiple patents, design and utility on. And then we launched into, I guess I should also say at the beginning, we almost operated as more of a service-based company as opposed to a product-based company, because professors, people from the community, classmates were bringing us their insert whatever type of pants and saying, hey, can you put a zipper in this? And my response was, I can. I don't know if you want me to, but I certainly can. And so that was how we realized how much product demand there was, technology demand there was, and we're able to use that to scale. So that kind of all built up into our first crowdfunding campaign, which we did on iFund Women in 2019. And then we started production on that campaign at the end of the year into 2020. We all know what happened then. Lost everything overnight that hadn't already left the factory, and was working other full-time jobs at the time. And then went into accelerator programs when no one could get product. And then our like next big kind of milestone was doing the Moose Jaw Mountaineering Outdoor Industry Accelerator out here in Colorado. That's what brought me out here. We ended that with a $50,000 purchase order from Moose Jaw Mountaineering, who at the time was the second largest retailer behind REI. They paid for half of it up front, which is unheard of.
Unheard of, yeah.
Yeah. Wish we could get those terms now. And then we won I was living in Boston at the time. Prior, we did the Mass Challenge Accelerator, and that was not industry specific. So there were, microchip this and solving dog blindness that, and then this P-Zipper idea, and we won the entire accelerator, which was $100,000 cash. Damn. And so that was a big external signal of, okay, like I don't know what other sign I'm waiting for. I think we should.
Are there strings
all in.
attached to that kind of cash, or is it wow? So it's simply like a prize to win the competition. All right, so spend a little bit more time describing an accelerator program. Sounds like you've went through 2 or 3 of them. I think you're the first person to come on the podcast who would have expertise in this arena. As a young entrepreneur, what value did accelerators provide to you?
A ton. I think I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, so there's a lot of small businesses, but there's not a lot of talk about startups and how to like fully get something off the ground unless you're inheriting a family business. And then I went to a liberal arts college, so learned a lot about a lot, but not necessarily any deep hard skills, I guess I would say. And then I think accelerators are great because they're a really focused period of time where you can fully explore what you're doing. So I don't know if anyone's watched like Silicon Valley, for example, but typically the step before an accelerator would be an incubator, where you're really in the idea phase or trying to decide on an idea to run with. Accelerator is taking whatever you've decided on and scaling that into a minimum viable product and growing from there. And so I was in economic consulting at the time, and I took leaves of absence from that employer to kind of explore this on the side, which I'm also really grateful to them, because I'm not sure that I ever would have kept pursuing this if I didn't have opportunities like that. But yeah, it gives you, it introduces you to networks of people who can help advise on every aspect of a business, because there's, as you know, so many, from the finances to the marketing to the operations to the HR, everything in between. And so it's a way to learn hands-on in a low-risk environment before you kind of fully take things public.
It sounds like you left both the accelerators with purchase orders and cash in the bank. But what would you say, really, do you feel like you were ready to put the business out there and do it? And was there something else that really, like at that point, you've already done all this stuff to get it up and running or to flesh out this idea as much as you possibly could? Did it just give you the confidence to push it out in there, feeling like you had all your X's and O's in line? Or was there something else that came out of the accelerators that you felt like you couldn't have gotten anywhere else?
I think twofold. Definitely the knowledge. I would not have gotten that anywhere else, at least not in such a structured kind of methodical way. But 2 was the confidence. I think as a perfectionist by nature, I think nothing really ever feels ready to go public. I think building a business is one of the most vulnerable things you can do. And having that level of validation was like, I can't ignore this. Like at this point, it's a no-brainer. There were people in college who were like, you should drop out I had one semester left. They were like, you should drop out and go all the way with this. And I was like, do you know how hard I worked to even like be here? Like, I'm not going to throw it all away for something that has an over 90% failure rate. So I think I'm actually a lot more risk averse than maybe the typical founder. And I think accelerator programs make entrepreneurship more accessible to more people, because you don't have to follow the traditional narrative of, I call it like the Steve Jobs narrative of dropping out of college, moving home to your parents' basement, emerging X number of months later with a unicorn. It's not realistic, and that's not what the majority of people's journeys are actually like.
So I want to talk about IP. Shout out Ian Gates, who's in the Second Nature community, who's helped Aaron Lutzi and I both on our individual and collective projects. He's been on the pod before, and we talked about the difference between trademarks and patents and things like that. I think part of your experience at the accelerator indicated that the thing that was your secret sauce, your differentiator, is this She-Fly technology. Or I'm getting that wrong now, but what is it called again?
Old habits die hard.
Yeah,
Go
sorry.
fly.
The Go-Fly technology. Excuse me. The point is, I know that's now a patented piece of IP for you, meaning you own it. It's your innovation that you've brought forth into the marketplace, which is a valuable thing. Talk us through how you came to understand that this was going to be kind of the core differentiating feature for you and how you went about protecting it.
Because we were working on a problem that historically has been so taboo, I felt that it was really important to have some other external form of validation, and IP is kind of the highest level of that you can get. So I was working, my last semester of college, I was working 4 jobs to pay for the initial legal fees to get these applications in, and learned a ton. It is one of those systems that's super bureaucratic. The laws really make no sense, and it's hard to figure out unless you end up hiring someone with that actual expertise. It's pretty gatekept. And on top of that, fewer than 16% of patent holders are women. So it was definitely an underrepresented space. We ended up being invited to testify before the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Intellectual Property on an invitation from Senator Leahy in Vermont, which was an incredible experience. I remember zooming in. It was in the middle of COVID too, so I was zooming in with like my laptop on a dresser, just a blazer on top, pajamas on the bottom, and it was a pretty surreal moment. But yeah, and then I always knew from the beginning that we wanted to make this technology as accessible as possible, and protecting it with IP is a really great way to do that, because then you can license it out. And so our business model always has been and is now like a lot closer to actually being one that is following the blueprint. If you think about like a Gore-Tex or a Vibram or a BOA or a Kizik, taking this seemingly niche, pretty premium technology, testing it out in your own product first to prove it, and then transitioning into a majority licensing company. And that's happened a lot faster than in some ways a lot faster than I thought. In other ways, I guess a lot slower than I thought. What is time anymore? I don't know. But that's why it's been so important to
It's
our journey.
fascinating, isn't it, Lutzi?
Well, and I think it's tricky too, because if you put your products out, how do you message to these companies that like, actually we're just doing this sort of as a proof of concept so that you incorporate this into your design? We're not trying to compete against you. We're trying to demonstrate this is something viable. And so it's got to be kind of tricky to walk that fine line of putting product out that's really great and solves a problem, but doesn't scare away the people that you're actually trying to sell to. What's that experience been like?
It's interesting because that has only emerged because we've been so successful with our own brand. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've pitched so many investors who are like, why didn't you just start with licensing? But if you actually think about that question, like, what would that have looked like? Like, was I going to walk around with my like hand sewn pants to $1 billion companies and be like, you should definitely do this? Like that, there would have been no incentive. And I do not think it would have been I would have been laughed out of the room. But now we have metrics that can't really be ignored at this point. You know, we're approaching 35,000 units on the market that have Go-Fly tech. And our products themselves outrank a lot of major brands. We're consistently top women's hiking pant of the year, top climbing pant, top outdoor shorts. Women have set world records wearing our products. And so what we made sure to build into this business model is the idea that it is any of our competitors, air quotes, are actually just future customers. So it is not my mission to be making hiking pants for the rest of my time as a founder, but I would love to support someone who already has that pretty dialed in and just give the kind of secret sauce for the Go-Fly. And then part two of that, and why building a brand has been so valuable, and I think something that people maybe discounted at the beginning, is that the full weight of our marketing is what we bring to those licensing deals, which is invaluable. Like at this point, we have an online following of 250,000 people across socials, which is incredibly outsized for a company that's 2 full-time employees. But we've been educating this audience for years now on this solution to a problem that hasn't always been acknowledged as a problem. And so all of our licensing deals, we've also helped sell ourselves both online and into retailers. And if you think about our first kind of case study with Liveson Designs out of Arkansas, they were primarily a men's company, men's outdoor and lifestyle. And we launched a women's overall with them on Kickstarter. And these overalls did over 100K on the first day. And now their women's overall outsells their men's. And that is because we brought our entire audience to that deal. So we're really in it with our partners. And the idea for the future is that we won't be making any physical product ourselves. But our marketing and our customers are all an audience that we pass along to whoever we partner with.
Dude, Lutzi, I've known Gigi now for 22 minutes. You are a very impressive person. This is really interesting. I want to I'd love to have you talk more about how the lives in thing. And of course, how we want to talk about Burton too, because this is two practical applications of this licensing business model. But I'd love for you to just double click on where and when you decided to pursue this business model, because it does feel like you eventually have to pick one of two paths, right? Create and market your own product, potentially expand the product line, move away or move outside of your core competence and start making jackets or t-shirts or things like that, or pursue the path that you've been on now and stick to the technology, the IP that you can protect, and sell that technology to bigger businesses. Was there a fork in the road moment, and how did you determine that this was the path you were going to take?
I think we're maybe approaching that fork in the road, but it's a lot of feeling it out as you go. I suspect in the future, people will be demanding a lot more exclusivity. So that's kind of a forced fork in the road, is like, okay, if, a Patagonia wants to put the Go-Fly into 250,000 SKUs a season, we're like, great, that's exactly what our mission is to get this into as many hands as possible. And we can do that much better via licensing than we can via a small brand beholden to product timelines and really long cash flow conversion timelines. I think the other piece that people forget, especially in this industry, is that startups in the outdoor industry and in product-based anything are not like tech companies, right? Like, it's not like you raise millions of dollars and then you get to go mess around behind the scenes and do a lot of pitching. You need the cash up front. And so without the Gnara brand and without our own products, there would be no cash coming in. Because we have daily sales direct to consumer and via wholesale retail. Via sales pipelines for licensing are so much longer, because you're convincing a company that they should put a technology into a product that is probably at least a year out in terms of timeline. So that's a lot longer to be waiting for things to kind of come to fruition than being able to immediately show proof of concept and build a following. So there are components that, in the same way that like direct to consumer and wholesale retail sometimes work really well together and sometimes put pressure on each other, there's definitely aspects of this that it it's hard to run 3 different business models right now, all under the same roof. But there's also ways in which they all support each other. And the brand awareness is super key, again, on something that is really just now starting to be talked about.
That brand awareness thing is really interesting in how you use that to sort of, send your audience in the direction of the brands you're collaborating with. I think that's such a brilliant strategy to employ.
There's so many applications too, right? Like, it would be very, very difficult for us to be like the top hiking pant and also the top sailing thing and also the top trail running thing and also the top ski and snow thing. But we can be the top in each of those arenas by licensing to the top in each of those arenas. So I think that's another way in which, like, I'm not going to start making super seasonal, super niche gear myself as Gnara, but I am going to make sure that our Go-Fly makes it into those other categories.
Did I hear you say that there's 2 people full-time at the company?
Yes. We've only had 2 to 3 full-time employees for a couple years.
I mean,
including yourself.
Including myself.
So one other person.
Amazing contractors. Yeah, right now one other person. As we know from listening to a lot of the founders you've brought on this show, it's a constant expansion, contraction, but on the whole, we have always been a tiny team.
Well, I think where Aaron was going is, who's the other partner that you have in the business? Who's the other full-time employee? What's their role? How do they support you as the founder?
Gabby, shout out to Gabby Davis. She was our first ever intern, also a Middlebury grad, majored in chemistry, and is a true Swiss Army knife behind the scenes. Has done everything from taught herself how to code for our site to customer service to helping me with wholesale to landing pages, helping to manage marketing, everything. Everyone does everything, which is kind of how it has to be in the beginning stages.
All right, I'm immensely impressed. All right, so coming back to the licensing, I'd love to hear about both Lives In and Burton. And to me, Lives In, I think, is a little bit, it doesn't have the same brand recognition as Burton for sure, but Lives In has been a BPC on the show, I think, in the past, and certainly a brand I'm familiar with. Tell me how those relationships came to be. I mean, you've already talked about Lives In, so maybe it's best to focus on Burton a little bit more now, because it feels to me like this could be an important inflection point moment for you and for the brand partnering with such an iconic snow sports business.
Yes, and it's so fun how it's played out, having one case study from someone who's not that much further along than we are, and then having this second case study that it's hard to think of a bigger one, partnering with a $1 billion brand. And it's all just been where the momentum was at any given point in time. So the ski bibs and compatible base layers that we have been working with Burton on, I've been testing them for over 2 years now. So it's been a long time coming in the product development kind of arena. And I have to shout out Kyle at Burton on the product team. She has pretty single-handedly pushed this through. One, because she instantly knew the importance of it, both in the backcountry and resort skiing too. But 2, because she also sees the accessibility angle to this technology, and Burton is really strong in their adaptive category. So this, again, is that initial pain point, which was cold weather. There's a lot more pain points that the Go-Fly technology solves for beyond just that more obvious one. And we officially opened pre-orders on these ski bibs and base layers, each in 2 different colors, extra small to 3XL. So we actually pushed Burton to expand that size range too, which was really cool to see. We opened those at the very, very end of this past ski season, and all of that inventory arrives next month, or the month that this podcast episode will hopefully go out. And we will have a storefront in Boulder on Pearl Street where people can actually come in and try on everything in person. And then we also have a couple more units that are still available online on our site.
This floral blur print is absolutely fire.
It's so cool. Yes, I'm really excited. At first we were like, do we start with just the solid color? Because, minimums can be high for something that you're just experimenting with. But I was like, no, this has to have a like exciting print to go along with it because what we're doing is so exciting.
I feel like you're downplaying this a little bit. I mean, to me, as an owner operator of my own little startup here, I mean, for you, team of two that started out of a college dorm room, now having a licensing agreement with maybe the most iconic snow sports brand in the world. I mean, it feels like a huge deal for you. How have you and your one employee and the various contractors been absorbing it? Is there time for celebration, or does it, I'm sure it probably introduces new stresses at the same time that it provides excitement.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Working with a company this big, you move a lot slower with a lot more approvals than you do when you're two people doing things basically whenever you want. But no, we definitely have taken time to celebrate. I think it will feel more real once this inventory is in hand, right? Like I have over a dozen iterations of everything we're about to launch, but I want that final thing in my hands. And I think that's just a normal part of entrepreneurship. It's all pretty nebulous and gooey, and you don't actually know if you're making progress or not until it's in front of you. You can touch it and feel it, and you're not behind a computer screen watching.
I've got to imagine that
pre-orders come in.
I've got to imagine that this deal with Burton is going to put you on the radar with a lot more brands. It probably opens up a lot of doors. But I've also got to imagine that being this visible on a global scale is probably going to open you up to people trying to rip off the IP. And I'm curious to know if you've had to defend the IP yet, because I feel like that's really one of the first true tests of holding these patents, is that you got to stop the people that are trying to infringe upon it. So have there been any moments like that yet where you've had to like put your foot down and deal with that, or have you been pretty lucky so far?
Cease and desist.
Knock on wood, not yet. You know, I think it's easy to be like, well, when it does happen, imitation will be the greatest form of flattery. I'm sure it will also be a great source of being pretty peeved. But we've been really strategic about that too, because I mean, there's no small brand that has millions of dollars set aside in an external bank account to like go start policing Alibaba knockoffs. But by aligning ourselves with really well-known brands that are known for their quality and their market size, you're no longer just coming after Gnara. If you're trying to mess with the Go-Fly, you're coming after Burton also. You're coming after all of the retail stores that we're in. And so it's, I forget what the phrase is, but, you know, protection by aligning ourselves within this greater community that carries a lot more weight and sway. And then I also think about examples on the flip side of that. I think in the past, people have been like, well, you know, couldn't a major brand just rip you off? And that the answer to that, or to anyone's example of this, is always yes. But if you think about what happened with like Backcountry, when Backcountry went after like every small business in North America that had Backcountry in the name, like that did not end well for them, and they had to entirely rescind it. And we have an online following of 250,000 people that are watching, that know we did it first. And like also, if you were to launch this without us, you're also missing out on our entire market. Like no one knows more about this than we do at this point. As a first-time founder, I think there's like, you know, plenty of things that I still have to learn, but I do know that I know more about this than anyone else. By choice or not.
Yeah, the outdoor community definitely does circle the wagons, especially around the founders when they view something as unethical, such as a pure knockoff of patented and protected IP. I'm sure there would be a lot of people that came to your defense, your massive audience notwithstanding. All right, so come back and tell us about this rotating showroom retail space in Boulder. We got to give a shout out to, I think it's Ryan Fessler from Auto & Co., who I think owns the space. He's a second naturalist, Lucy. He's in Slack. So he's got that space in Boulder. How did you guys come to be connected? What's the idea there? What's the purpose of it? And yeah, anything else that would be relevant?
Yeah, so the upfront costs of opening up a retail space, especially in this kind of e-com D2C age, are pretty insane, especially on Pearl Street, especially in Boulder, where all of these expenses are high. And the model of this shop is really cool in that it's a pretty small space. So there's not like small brands can fully fill it with not much more than you'd bring to a trade show, for example. And that's how we found out about it. A lot of our fellow founder friends, Corinne at Skita and Cassie at Wild Rye and Ombras and all the different brands that have been in this space are people that we really look up to and love to collab with. And so we will be there in Q4 of 2025. And our vision for this space, are you familiar with the term a third place?
Yep.
So it's exactly that. We want it to be the space that's not home and not work, that is this social space where people can gather and make real connections and explore new ideas. And I'm really excited about that because as a small startup, all of your focus pretty much has to be on buy my shit all the time. And that can be exhausting. And so much of the value that Gnara brings to the world is not just in the products, but it's in our content and our education. And this is a space where we can really explore that. So it also comes with this event space. And we are hosting weekly rides and runs and yoga that will all stop and start at the shop. We are bringing in musicians. We're bringing in film screenings. We'll have waxing nights, author talks, craft nights, all sorts of stuff. It's not lost on me how special it is to have access to a space like this and a place like this. And so I really want to use this platform to amplify all of the other small businesses that are also really struggling right now. This is an unprecedented economy. And I think especially in an age where like Meta is not working, what always has worked and what will continue to work, I think, is those in-person interactions. So I'm excited to get to be a lot more creative. And I think it's just like a small business owner dream to get to like unlock my shop and steam my inventory and talk to customers at the cash register. Like, when I'm, solo behind a screen for 1 million hours a day, you really lose sight of what you're doing and why. And our events are always the thing that I've found most personally motivated, that remind me what the heck we're doing and why.
Love it.
It seems like an opportunity really to, like you said, kind of intensify the relationship with the community that you have, because I don't think, based on kind of what you talked about so far, like a retail strategy doesn't seem like it's really in the cards as a long-term play, but to be able to have these like creative windows where you get to double down with the people that mean the most and give them sort of an access point to come in and celebrate the brand and express the brand in different ways. And, like you sort of alluded to, everybody needs to be voting with their dollars to support the brands that they want to see. And so you're giving your community some additional surface area to do exactly that.
Yes.
So go deeper on what you just said there about like operating in this economy. Meta's not working anymore. Share what you mean by both of those things. Like, what is it like out there for a direct-to-consumer brand or just like somebody who's making products for an outdoor consumer right now?
It's tough. It's really tough. It's a constant balance between staying connected with other people and paying attention to what other brands are doing, and then like as a side effect of doing that, seeing people go under left and right. Like, I feel like there are more fellow brands I've watched downsize and go under in the past 6 months since tariffs were announced than in the past 3 years I've been doing this full time. And when you see big brands going through major layoffs, like, that's scary. Like, if they're not figuring it out, how the heck are the most under-resourced players in this entire game going to figure it out? But I think the answer is we're all doing things that haven't been done yet. So by definition, we're trying something new, which means we have a chance. And I think I majored in international politics and economics, this is maybe the first time in the 3-4 years I've been full-time that it actually feels relevant to what I'm doing. And unfortunately, that's just like realizing I understand what a tariff is and who it affects, and realizing like most people didn't know that prior. We make half of our stuff in the United States and nothing in China, and the ripple effects of this are really devastating on consumer spending, on interest rates, on investor liquidity, on like uncertainty is the number one like toxic variable you can put into a fragile equation of startups, and it has absolutely achieved that. Like, we haven't even seen the price hikes that are coming. Also, economic lags, like people are like, oh, nothing seems bad yet. The economics take a long time to play out, and like, unfortunately, I think that aspect of it is still yet to come. But yeah, there are, I mean, like I said, the small brands in this industry are the ones that are most innovative, and that gives me hope.
Really interesting. Good luck. I mean, by the time, I'm just personally curious here. This may be too niche of a question, but everybody is anticipating that the Fed is going to cut interest rates over the next few months. How will that impact Gnara specifically in the outdoor economy more generally, or will it?
I mean, even like if and when those changes take place, it will still take months for them to like, for the effects of that change to actually come into being. And for startups, like, months are live or die. Like, it's, small brands do not have the bandwidth nor the buffer to like withstand continued changes and continued unknowns. And so I think we're all focusing on the things that we do know. Like, we do know our customer audiences. We do know what they want. We do know what's working. And so that's ultimately the only thing you can do to combat it. I also think we're going to see a rise in trends that are slightly more immune to macroeconomic policy. So I think like the upcycled movement and like mending existing products that you already have are all things that are, especially in the short term, I think there's going to be a lot more of it. And we've already been seeing. And we've been fortunate that we've been able to do some really cool drops with Birdie Blue. So any of our product that, if we have a return that comes back defective or something that didn't pass quality control, we use that scrap fabric and we make it into fanny packs and tote bags and dop kits. And we've sold out of those drops every time we do them. So we're leaning into that while really maintaining the inventory that we do have and trying to both make it last as long as possible and also constantly trying to be converting it into cash. So there's a lot of dynamics at play here.
One of the other things that is kind of coming online too is opportunities for, people to support the brands. We just saw Wild Rye go through a round of funding on WeFunder. And from what I understand, you're also going to be doing a round on WeFunder as well. Could you talk a little bit more about sort of your decision to jump in there and maybe what you may have learned from Cassie going through it?
Yeah. So we've learned a lot about crowdfunding because that's how we got our start. Most of the products that we have launched, we've launched through a product crowdfunding campaign on iFundWomen or on Kickstarter. Even the products we've licensed into, as you heard, have come about on Kickstarter. And then things that we launch on our site, we often utilize pre-orders. One, to help with how long the cash conversion cycle is in apparel, and two, to make our orders more accurate and less wasteful so that we're not ordering in colors or in sizes that there isn't actually as much demand for. And I think what platforms like WeFunder have done is really, democratize the concept of investment so that if you are a customer, especially an early day customer, you are the reason a brand is still around and was able to get its start, and you should be able to share in that upside without being an accredited investor. And I think the other thing they allow us to do is to really get closer to the people who have always gotten it and to the people that this idea has always resonated with. I've also raised traditional funding from angels, VCs, family offices, and there's a lot of, even when you have incredible traction, there's still a lot of convincing and honestly distractions that go into it. Like, that's a whole thing to manage. That's not even like running the actual business, making the actual product, doing the actual sales deals. And so the ability to go straight to the source and have the people who were your customers before they were anyone else. Also be the people who are supporting you and who see the larger picture on the financial side, is also just a lot more efficient and a lot more fun.
So just to be specific for the audience here, WeFunder is different than something like Kickstarter because it's equity crowdfunding. So the people that will contribute to this campaign will end up being owners of the Gnara brand, at least minority owners. Talk about the decision to do it that way. I mean, you just kind of did, but there must have been some consideration into, hey, do we go back to Kickstarter? And it's kind of powerful, as you just mentioned, to kind of find that alignment with your customer and allow them to participate in building the brand alongside you.
Yeah, we've always diversified our revenue streams and also our funding as much as possible, because at any point in time, again, what you're doing is like more likely that it's not going to work than it does. But given the mess of the past 5 years between the pandemic and the outdoor boom and bust and now tariffs, I think it's built a lot of resiliency within companies, and they've had to get a lot more creative. This actually isn't that creative for us because, again, we've always gone to our community. And yeah, I know of like 5 other brands, including like licensees that, have turned to equity crowdfunding. And I think that is a major market signal. It's similar to the idea of how like GoFundMe almost became like a 4th branch of government when everyone was relying on it during the pandemic to fund everything. It's like that, but instead of like lending, you are actively taking part in a company and given the ability to have ownership in that company, which is pretty unprecedented. Historically, investment is only limited to accredited investors. And that certainly has advantages as well, but sometimes those people are actually not the people who are closest to the ground on what's happening in whatever your specific industry is.
So what does that unlock in terms of the business itself? I mean, is this really, or maybe what were the motivating factors, or what do you kind of hope to do post WeFunder with everything? Is it to, kind of double down on the licensing stuff? Is it to, fund more product orders? Like how does that play out, or is that sort of part of the calculus for getting the whole thing going?
Certainly helps with working capital, certainly helps with inventory a little bit, but the main thing that it helps with is being able to scale, especially in the licensing revenue stream. And that's the piece that we're most excited about. And that's also the piece that is our customers directly, who are always giving the ideas of what they want to see Go-Fly in next. So it's great for marketing, it's great for press, it's great for product, and it's great for sales.
So to grow the licensing revenue stream, what efforts are you making to do that? Is it a bunch of outbound sales of just like, hey, this is our technology, here's the product that we think it might be useful in, here's the value prop, let's work together?
It can be that simple. It can also be a lot more complicated, especially when you think about the fact that I'm doing sales for 3 different revenue streams right now. But again, a lot of this starts with our direct-to-consumer customers. So the ones who have ordered our product are like the word-of-mouth evangelists, who are also the ones who go into their local gear shop and ask for us to be stocked there, who are also the ones who turn to their other favorite brands and say, I love this flight suit that I have. Is there a way to get a zipper into it? And so I think the kind of two-way nature of that persuasion carries a lot more weight than just me as the founder saying, hey, I think there's a huge opportunity for your brand here to not just like serve a customer demand, but also simplify or symbolize like what you truly stand for. And it means a lot more if I'm saying that, but also customers are demanding it. And that historically is how every product, like overalls were our next requested most product. And we could have made those ourselves, and we made a lot of prototypes ourselves. But then we realized we could partner with Livson and bring them into the world on a larger scale with a larger audience, and incorporate more ideas. And so that's why we did it that way. Yeah.
So being that this is a business to business podcast, there's probably some actually great brands that should be partnering with you, what's the best way actually for them to get in contact so that they can make this thing happen? Because I think they absolutely should.
I think so too. I think a lot of them end up getting tagged in our social posts when customers are like, I want to see this in this brand. So
Nice.
all these brands, talk to your social media people, because definitely the demand is out there. But to get in touch with us, I feel like I'll just give my email, which is gg@gnara.com. The
A
letter
baller
G
email
twice.
address. gg@gnara.com. That's such a good email address.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna put it in the show. I'm gonna put it in the show notes so
Yeah,
that people can actually pull this down and actually hit you up, because I feel like, yeah, the licensing thing here, the opportunity to create lots of new stuff, and the brands that we know are listening to this podcast. I can think of more than a few that should be having this conversation.
Yeah.
Yes. Or swing by our store. Like, see it in real life. Don't just
When
take
does
my
that
word for
open?
it. October 1st.
Let's go. Is this
So we'll
pod
be
coming out
moving
before
in that
that?
week, and then the second week is when we'll do like our hard launch once we've worked out all the kinks. It's a one-day
then-
move-in, so
And when does the WeFunder start?
that will be announced. We'll link to it in the show notes.
Okay. Look, doing our job for us, Lutzky. This is
You
great.
know, hey, we got it all dialed in. Now we've got this worked out. This podcast is gonna drop right as all that stuff goes live. We've got it all worked out. We've got a plan.
Perfect.
We're dialed
maybe,
in here.
Maybe last thing before we get to BPC, unless Lutzy's got anything. I mean, this conversation about Burton and Lives In just conjures in my mind the difference between the active wear, performance wear, actual like technical outdoor product versus lifestyle product. And it feels to me like the overalls and the lifestyle is probably a much larger market than female snowboarders in the Burton case. Mm-hmm. You started with, you've talked about hiking pants and snow pants, etc. But I don't know, how do you think about the lifestyle market, and do you view it as like maybe the biggest opportunity for growth?
Absolutely. Our vision is that the Go-Fly becomes the norm instead of the exception. So anything that has a traditional fly on it right now, anything that is a piece of clothing that's attached to your legs, is something that could have the Go-Fly in it. And we've seen that a ton. Like our products tend to ruin, if you read our reviews, they tend to ruin everything else in someone's closet because nothing else has this functionality in it. And we want to change that. We want everything in your closet to have this. There's something else I was going to say about this in the lifestyle. Oh, especially during COVID, that was kind of the first time that we noticed demand for this outside of just classic outdoor use cases. And you saw that with people who, particularly in travel, there are people who didn't want to use plane bathrooms or weren't going into gas stations on cross-country road trips.
This is my wife.
Yes, it's a huge market of people, and it's music festivals. We get so many requests for music festivals. They're like, when is the Burning Man version of
Oh my God, that
coming
is
out?
brilliant. You got to launch the 2026 Burning Man pant. Oh my God.
Yeah. One of our most successful marketing campaigns was at Outside Fest in Denver this year, and I put posters in every single porta potty. There were hundreds of porta potties on site for this music festival, and now everyone came straight to our booth when they saw those, because it just makes so much, like, once you think about one scenario where this would be useful, you realize it's like infinite scenarios.
Gigi, you are brilliant, man.
This is
The
amazing.
porta potty marketing campaign too. I'm like at a loss here. Will you come work for me or work with me at my company, or maybe you be my boss? Amazing.
Let's talk.
Such a wealth of information here, and yeah, really inspiring to see what you've built in such a short period of time, and going from the glaciers of Alaska to the dorm rooms of Middlebury College, now to ideally the closets of every second nature listener on planet Earth. Let's move to brand product content, BPC, our closing segment. Gigi, you are our guest. Please get us started.
Okay, so I was trying to think about this in advance, and I have so many founder friends whose brands and products I love, and so it's really hard to choose. So instead I went the content route, and this is going to be kind of a 2-for-1. I hope it's not cheating. The first, where this started is the movie American Symphony, which is on Netflix, and it's about John Batiste and his wife, Suleika Joud, and it's about their journey as he is at the height of navigating the height of his career, which is like writing a symphony and opening for the Grammys and winning multiple, while she is experiencing recurrence of cancer after 10 years of remission. And I think what this movie does so well, I mean, beautiful visuals, beautiful music, is show how people can hold huge extremes at the same time, like the best of the best and the worst of the worst in the same moment, which is really relatable to entrepreneurship. Like, you have the most exciting thing happening ever, and also like don't know how you're gonna figure out how to continue to be around. I think when I watched this, actually, it was very close to our Burton pre-order launch, and we lost one of our team members, Sarah, in an avalanche the day before we launched pre-orders with Burton. And so that was like a perfect, I guess, example of this idea of like, holy shit, how are both of these things true at the same time, and like which one is reality? And the answer is both are. So one, that movie, and then two, there is so much out there about like what a founder's morning routine should be. And like, yes, I do the cold plunging and try to have some nice sunlight activation and drink water before coffee and all that good stuff. But the thing that has actually been most useful to me is a daily journal prompt from the Book of Alchemy, which is written by Suleika. And this was started based on her, during the pandemic, she started a Substack called the Isolation Journals, and she would have different authors submit prompts. And so it's this book of like 1 to 2 page essays that end in a prompt. And some of them are really like niche and specific, like tell your vermin story, or like what was your relationship with your first grade teacher like. And some of them are a lot more meta and like I never expect where it's going. So I do that with my partner every day, and it's been a really great way to learn more about myself and kind of subconscious thoughts I have about the business and each other and all that good stuff.
That's amazing. There's a lot of book nerds listening to this podcast that have all simultaneously ordered. Incredible. I'm
waiting for my affiliate link. No, just kidding.
Wow. Thank you, Gigi. Lucy, you want to go next?
Yep. I just recently discovered a new Substack. It's called Link in Bio, and it's basically the source for brand social information, enlightenment, trend reports, just like insights left, right, and center. If you're running brand social, this is like all killer, no filler. It's awesome. There's a free version. There's a paid version. There's actually a version which I actually love. It's run by Rachel Carton. She has an option where she's like, if you work at a corporation, here's what you sign up. And I've actually drafted the email that you need to write to your boss to like get this approved, and it costs twice as much as my monthly thing, which I think is genius.
Yes.
So
and
good.
I hope it's working well for her. There's also a line in there. She's like, for every 50 that I get from the corporate, I actually give away 5 or 10 to like students or people that need it too. So I just discovered this recently. Shout out Nate Helming. I'm diving in and I'm fascinated. I love it when you find these treasure troves of information for stuff that you genuinely are trying to get better at. So there you go.
And it's on Substack?
Yep. Link in Bio is the name
It's funny that you mentioned this because I just subscribed to that, I think like last month. I forget how I heard about it, but it is super cool.
All right. I'm late to the ball game here, but I'm going to go hit the subscribe. I'll close us down here, and it'll sort of bring a lot of things together here in the Second Nature universe. Friend of the podcast, Matt Trappy. I'm actually rocking his Auteur Sportif t-shirt right now. By the time this podcast comes out, we'll have released a new film in collaboration with Scratch Labs. Aside from Gigi, maybe my other favorite episode we've ever done with Ian McGregor and Alan Lim from Scratch. And the film documents Adam Peterman's race at the Western States 100. Adam Peterman is the 2022 champion of the Western States 100, returned in 2025 to much fanfare, and ultimately had a shitty day, a shitty race, but got it done and finished in 21 hours, a full, what was it, like 6.5 hours slower than the time that he won the race in a couple of years prior. On a race, at a day where you easily could just bag it, call it, DNF, go home, keep your powder dry for another day. Adam chose to march it out valiantly, and Scratch made a film about it with Matt Trappy called What Remains. And Trappy with Auteur Sportif has done a really cool sort of like product drop, a t-shirt and a hat that are sort of, tangentially related to the film itself or part of the activation here. So I thought it was really cool. It brings together two former guests on the podcast, Trappy, and of course the founders of Scratch. It features a great friend of mine, Adam Peterman, one of the best trail runners in the world, and also has some cool products in the mix there too from Auteur Sportif. So a very worthy BPC from me this week.
Very cool.
I just wrote that down.
All right. Georgia Grace Edwards from Crested Butte, Colorado. Good luck with everything you're doing with Gnara. Keep us posted. We're going to swing by the shop in Boulder as soon as it opens. We'll encourage all of our Second Nature community to go check out the We Funder. Also, we appreciate your time on the show.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing.